all that frustration builds up and it blows up, he's not going to react to reason very well. Yet here I am trying to reason with a kid, a 5-year-old kid. Hi, I'm Sean Basie, Saint Facetious from www.saintfacetious.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel here. And if you want to read the blog version of this, go ahead and follow the link below. If you want regular updates, there's a newsletter link below also. Sign up on that. But for today, I'm going to talk, last weekend there's a thing called the Bright Festival here in Brussels. And the Bright Festival is all about having really cool exhibits and all that. But you know what? It was kind of, I don't want to say it was lame this year, but really they just threw up this video on the side of a wall and they called that a light mapping. That's not a light mapping, guys. And so it was kind of disappointing for me. There was a couple of cool exhibits. There was a little marble one. But, anyway, I'm not here to talk about my disappointment or my almost throwing a tantrum. I'm here to talk about my kids' tantrum. When we were over there, they led us through this whole museum thing, but there was nothing in the museum. It was just the regular museum stuff. There wasn't any light show. Last year there was a light show in there, and they just had us go through the store, and exit through the gift shop. Have you ever seen that? It's a good little documentary about Banksy. But they took us through this store. And then to the final exhibit, actually. And in the store, there was a little pan flute, and I could see the future. It just flashed in my face. This was it. So the kid picks up the pan flute, starts playing it, except he can't play it because it's too complicated. I already know this. And he's like, oh, I want to buy this. I'm like, maybe not. And then he works us through, and then finally he gets to buy it. After he's working his little begging magic, and things are okay. He's a little pleased by then, but we get to that final exhibit, which is this weird Chinese tea ceremony thing with lights and mood music, and then that's when it begins. The bawling, the horror, the the whole time he's just continually bawling after that because he can't play the pan flute. And I already knew that. Knew that was going to happen. But that's not the real cause of the tantrum. Likely not the real cause of the tantrum. So that's what I'm going to get to now. Now, why do tantrums even exist? They don't make any sense. You think about them in the evolutionary days, right? When men were first developing. And by men, I mean men and women and etc. When we were first developing as a species, we're doing things that keep us alive. And those are the patterns of behavior that have continued on today, are the things that kept us alive through history. And you can't tell me tantrums are one of these things that kept us alive. My visceral reaction, my first reaction to a tantrum is very visceral. Just hearing crying, it just eats at me. And I'm like, oh my God. It's not something where I want to be a caring and loving parent. I hear that stuff and I just want to defenestrate something. But I don't. I keep my cool. So don't say, hey man, you shouldn't be throwing things out windows or people. Only Russians do that. Only the Russian government, not common Russians, obviously. Where was I? So yeah, on the development of tantrums. Yeah, I just don't buy it. That's not a natural thing. So why do they happen? I mean, I guess it's crying out. You have to put yourself in their shoes, right? You have limited language abilities when you're 2 or 3 or 4. You have limited expression. You have limited abilities to maneuver and manipulate people. You don't know your boundaries, so you're just commanding. You're throwing. You're yelling. And that's kind of the one of the roots of tantrums is you don't really know. On one hand, you don't really know how to handle a situation. You don't have those skills. And on the other hand, you don't have the language skills. You don't have the comprehension skills. And on the other hand, everything seems like a really big deal because you're like a little tiny person. So you have to when you see a kid first having a tantrum, zoom in to their perspective on that. And you also have another dimension to that. Is like the round, like the levels of importance. Okay, there's like number 10, that's serious, real serious crap. That's like you're getting audited by Doge. Number, like you're gonna get fired. Number 1 is the really not serious stuff. Like you broke a. No, that's serious stuff. I was gonna say that you broke some spaghetti noodles, but for Italians, maybe that's hard. Like you dropped a pin on the floor. Okay, not a big deal. Okay, so 0 to 10 on that scale. But the thing is, that scale is limited by everything you've experienced in your perception and your own history. So where for one person, having to abandon their home and migrating to another country, that's obviously a big 10. But for another person who hasn't done that and has never experienced something like that, having the wrong type of noodle in your spaghetti might be a 10, you know? And they're going to have the same emotional investment and reaction as that person who had to migrate, who lost their home and all that. I'm not equating those two events, obviously. One is objectively more serious, but on the subjective level where you haven't experienced such a thing, you're going to equate those feelings are equated. Okay, so you have to deal with that. And when you're like 4 years old, and that's the most serious thing, and I bring up this spaghetti example based on real life, like walking through the park, my kid was like, what are we having for dinner? And I look over to him, I'm like, okay, I know what's coming. Spaghetti, like, what kind of noodles? Like the flat ones. And another tantrum. But there it is. We hit that number 10 on the tantrum scale. On the, I don't want to say a Richter scale, that's already taken. On the, let's go with tantrum scale. Okay, so it was really, really serious for him. But even for serious stuff, like kids can take serious stuff with a certain level of preparation. So there are other underlying causes that lead to tantrums that you can prevent. And this is especially important if you're out traveling with your kid, because you're going to want to mitigate all those different things that cause the tantrums while you're out there. So one of those things could be tiredness. Is he overly tired? Have you been walking around a lot? Do you need to take some rests? Do you need to sit around? Sometimes they're not really tired from walking, they're tired from the boredom of walking. So are they bored? Do they need to be entertained for a little bit? Obviously, as a parent, it becomes trying to entertain them all the time, and that leads to your tantrum. But you do your best. Try to predict that, especially when you're traveling. And I try to work in, like in travels, I try to work in where are the nearest playgrounds, where are the nearest McDonald's. You got to be strategic about that. And then next, he could just be overwhelmed. A lot of new experiences. I say he, she. They could just be overwhelmed. A lot of new experiences going on, new sights, new sounds, and all that new stuff. Like they have to take in. It's a lot of sense experience to kind of compute. And that can lead to a little computational overload right there. And that can cause a tantrum too. And then there's, of course, a need for attention. If you're not paying them attention and they start feeling like you're ignoring them, the parent is ignoring them, they don't like that. And of course, there is just the random testing of boundaries. But that doesn't really lead to tantrums so much as it does to just a lot of frustrating incidents. But yeah, so you can kind of look at those causes, and while you're traveling, kind of try to mitigate some of those things. I think when we live on our pattern of life, it becomes harder to mitigate those things because you're so used to doing certain things and that you need to get things done in your schedule. But when you're traveling, you can, try to make a bit of room for it. That's just my advice. Try to make that room. In your planning, in your Google mapping, I like to have everything on Google Maps. You got to know where everything is ahead of time so you know exactly the direction to go when it begins. So of course things to deal with, like I say, still go. You have a kid, you're traveling, you should still do cool stuff. Still go to the museums, still go to theaters, okay? Don't let yourself be restricted by that. But do your thing to mitigate, and if it the explosion does happen, just relocate. Take them out of there and go somewhere else. These people, they paid 40, 50 euros for a ticket. They shouldn't be penalized by a kid throwing a tantrum. Just take them out. You hate it whenever other kids throw tantrums. You should be mindful of other people. Always be mindful of other people. Otherwise, why would they be mindful of you? Okay, and then my first reaction when my kid is throwing a tantrum is to try to reason with him. Like, why am I trying to reason with him? Try to reason or trick him or whatever to get him out of that tantrum. But that's kind of dumb because of the reasons I already explained. Either there's an underlying cause or he's just frustrated about all this stuff, and then all that frustration builds up and it blows up. He's not going to react to reason very well, yet here I am trying to reason with a kid, a 5-year-old kid. That's you got to think of them more like pets than children. I kid, but on an abstract level, yes, you do have to look at a little more manipulatory actions here, and so you're not looking to reason with them or to level with them. You want to calm them down. So 2 ways to do that: to distract them and just go, oh, somebody else, something else. Look at that dog over there. Look at that. This is silly. Or hit yourself, fall over, make them laugh. Just do something kind of a little crazy, silly. That usually works. Or if, just hug them. Maybe they just need a hug. Or maybe you just say, hey, maybe they don't want a hug immediately. Just say, hey, I'm here for when you need that hug and you're ready to calm down. And maybe just let them cry for a bit because you've already removed them from the situation. Now, when you're out and about, most people look at the parent and child tantrum situation and they have sympathy for the parent. Okay, but if you're a parent and you freak out and you start giving a tantrum back to the tantrumatic child, people will not have sympathy for you. So when you feel the eyes staring down on you while your kid is screaming, know that those are sympathetic eyes on a most typical situation, or they're from people who don't have children in the first place and shouldn't be all judgy about it because they don't know what the crap they're judging anyway. And we don't really care about those people's opinions. Sorry, single friends. That's just how it goes. So soothe them down. If you want to start explain afterwards when they're later resting and in a place of peace. So, for example, when my kid was freaking out about the whole pan flute situation, later when he was calm, I was like, hey man, what's up? And he's like, well, I really can't play this thing. And then, we adjusted some things. We tried it out, and he was able to get a note out. So that's all a happy ending. By the way, I've just reset all my formatting for this awesome book of A Facetious Guide to Prague. And so you should check it out online on Amazon. Link down right below. Also, I have an upcoming book, A Facetious Guide to Traveling with a Kid. Hence all these kid-related topics lately. If you'd like to have an update about when that comes out, and perhaps get a free or discounted version, then follow the newsletter link down below and sign up for the newsletter. All right. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Ciao.